Welcome to Film Strip, movie reviews presented by Continuous Play Podcast. These podcasts are spoiler-filled as we discuss the plots, characters, and themes of the films in review. All content used or discussed in these podcast episodes is the property of the respective owners and used under the Fair Use Act, Section 504, C2, Title 17.
Welcome to Film Strip. I'm Jay.
I'm Nick.
And this is our review of Krampus, starring Adam Scott, Toni Collette, David Koechner, Allison Tolman, Conchetta Ferrell, MJ Anthony, Stefania LaVeo, Krista Stadler, and Luke Hawker. Directed by Michael Dougherty of Trick or Treat fame. Released in 2015 on a budget of $15 million, grossed $61.5 million in its box office run. Now, Nick, you recommended this one. I heard a lot about it back in 2015. But I just didn't get around to seeing it last holiday. Had a lot of travel going on and other stuff, and just didn't see it. And then every time I would think about it, I'm like, it's not really Christmas time. I'm not really in the mood for that. So it wasn't until you said, hey, let's do it for the podcast in 2016 here that I even thought about it again. So how did you discover this thing?
Well, I remember seeing a trailer for it probably like in November, probably about a month before it was coming out. And I was like, holy crap, this is like the first time I've seen any like marketing for this movie. And apparently, kind of in the horror circles, I guess this was kind of known that it was coming out, being by Michael Dougherty, the guy behind, the cult one of the cult movies, Trick or Treat, not the old one with like Ozzy Osbourne and everything, but the newer one that came out a few years ago. It was one of these movies that was made and then it was like kind of shelved because I didn't think they really knew what it was, and then it was eventually released on DVD. And since then, it's really developed like a very strong cult following as far as it being like one of those Halloween movies that like everybody goes to kind of see, and it kind of created its own little mascot. I don't know if you ever seen Trick or Treat, Jay, but Sam with his
the little candy thing.
Little candy cane with the bite taken out of it. It was a fun movie. I mean, it's not a great movie, but it's fun, and it's I think it's one of the stronger anthology horror movies out there. I put it like right alongside like Creep Show and Tales from the Dark Side, and movies like that where it's kind of You got like 4 or 5 different stories that kind of interconnect. They kind of got characters that kind of cross in between them, and it's a very cruel movie, but it's done in a way that it's like a very like dark comedy. And seeing the trailers for Krampus when that first came out, it had the same vibe as Trick or Treat, where it was dark and it had monsters and everything, but it also had kind of like a little twinkle in its eye where it's like, we're not being 100% serious here because we're being so over the top. But yeah, I remember we actually were planning on going to a movie about a week before Christmas, and this was out, and I actually took the family to go see it because I just really like wanted to see it. And sitting next to my 8-year-old son, I'm sitting there laughing, and he's holding onto my arm because it's scaring the crap out of him.
And this is the kid that like sleeps with the plush stuff, face hugger, and like watches Alien and all that stuff all the time. So if it scared him, it was doing its job.
Yeah, I think you got to be honest. I mean, like watching a horror movie during the day on your TV is a little bit different than, watching it in a dark theater, or essentially it was just us and a couple other people in the movie theater. But I think when you got that surround sound of the big giant screen in front of you and being in the dark like that, movies that are a little bit more, I guess you could say, it's scary movies are going to be a little bit more scary in the movie theater. So it really got to them. And we actually, for this podcast, the reason this came up with me was I was actually talking to my mom, and she was just talking about like Christmas movies that she was going to be watching this season. And I was just doing some Black Friday shopping on like, a few of the big box stores. And I happened to go into their like Blu-ray area and see that this movie was like on special at Best Buy for like $4.99 for like the deluxe DVD edition and everything. And I was like, holy crap. And I talked to my mom, I'm like, you remember the movie Krampus that came out? And she goes, no, I don't know anything about that. And I'm like, all right, tomorrow I'm going to load it up onto, we have a shared Vudu account, and I'm like, hey, have you guys watched this? And she watched it, and, after they watched it, I remember me and Chase, we actually sat down again to watch it just downstairs, and he was actually laughing this time as opposed to clutching onto my arm. So I don't know if it was just the year difference or, again, just the atmosphere of, being in the safety of our family room as opposed to being in a big theater that's almost empty. So
yeah, no, that I'm glad you had that family togetherness with it. That's something my family has done for years, was go to the movie theater at Christmas time. I have a lot of memories of seeing films in theaters at Christmas. So it's something I still do. Like, I will go to see a movie or whatever. I may not go with the fam anymore because Dad doesn't really do it much anymore. My brother and I occasionally will if there's something good out. Like, there's a Star Wars movie out the last couple of years, and he and I grew up on those, so we'll see those. But he doesn't do horror flicks. And, I can talk my wife into doing horror films during a certain time of the year. But Christmas is not that time, because she is like all Hallmark channeled up right now. Like, this is her time. And so that's fine. She could do that. So she didn't watch this one with me. I watched it by myself this time. And I got to tell you, I didn't know what to expect. Like, I knew almost nothing about it other than it's supposed to be this sort of shadow tale on Santa Claus. Like, I thought it was like if Santa Claus was actually evil. It was one of those things. Come to find out it's not that at all, but I didn't know much about it, but I did know this. I knew that all of the actors in it that I knew, Adam Scott, David Koechner, Allison Tolman in particular, were all comedy actors. They were all comedians. They'd all done a lot of comic stuff. Adam Scott's done a little bit of everything, but I know him from being a comedian. Koechner's been on stuff like The Office and is in Anchorman and that kind of thing. And I just kind of always think of him in that role. Allison Tolman's the same way. She does a lot of comedy. So I thought, okay, if this is going to be a horror-comedy, they've done the right thing, is that they've got the cast right. Because that's the hard thing with films like this, is they can try to make a horror comedy, but if you don't have the cast right and people that can really pull that off, it doesn't work. And then Michael Dougherty helming it. When I saw that, I said, oh, I know I'm in for something good, because I liked Trick or Treat. I thought he really nailed it, and he mixed a good bit of horror and comedy in that one. And I thought, well, I'm really, intrigued to see what he's come up with here. So I was curious about it for sure. And it's, for nothing more than, it's so rare to find a horror film I don't know a lot about or haven't seen. And so I'm always down for that. And we always do something like this around, holiday time, it seems like. And, we did Jack Frost. I did that with Ron and Brian. That's kind of our schlock horror of the season. But I thought, let's do one that has good reviews and people think a lot of, and see if that's warranted or not. Coming back to something that was really popular last year, let's see if it's still popular a year later.
And for me, I know, like you're saying, like your wife's kind of into the whole Hallmark, movies. Like for me, for Christmas, it's like, I'm one of these people that, there's movies like Die Hard and stuff, and I know it's not a Christmas movie because it doesn't need to take
we've
place.
reviewed as Christmas movies before.
Yeah, and it's this whole thing, like that Lethal Weapon, just because they take place over Christmas, and like I said, Christmas really doesn't have much to do with the movie itself. I mean, yeah, there's some few elements in there, but you could easily put Die Hard on the 4th of July or something like that, and it would work just as well. But I'm the type of guy that, like, okay, well, that's a Christmas movie for me, so I watch like Die Hard, I watch, Gremlins, I watch, and then again to like the holiday classics, like the, Christmas Vacation, Christmas Story, Elf, Home Alone. There's movies I watch like with my family where it's kind of like solid, we always going to watch like 8 specific movies throughout the year. You know what I mean? And it's like, and after seeing this one, I remember it was like, that's going to go in the rotation. It's going to go in the rotation. I'm not going to say whether, it's good or bad until we get to the end of it, but it was such a different type of Christmas movie that it was like, it's worth revisiting around the holidays. And a lot of the movies I watch, like a lot of the Christmas movies I watch, I know they're not very good. Like Home Alone is, it's got some merit to it. I know it was a huge movie at the time, but you watch it now and it's like, it's not really that great of a movie. It's just got a bunch of moments in there. It's actually kind of
sad. Like, it's really sort of sick and sad now.
It is. It is. When you look at it in adult eyes, like Home Alone, and like, what the hell is wrong with that family? You know what I mean? I'm thinking, I'm like, if I was, Macaulay Culkin's dad and like the uncle was talking to my kid like that, he'd have a broken nose. You know what I mean? It's like, you're going to sit there and call my kid a jerk in front of everybody. It's like, you're going to be spitting out teeth.
Yeah, exactly.
Doing that. But there's like so many stuff. But yeah, just like I said, with me, like with Christmas movies, it's like, it's all over the place. I like so many different kinds. And I throw like movies like Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. I know it's a Thanksgiving movie, but to me, like that's like the first like holiday season movie that I watch. And same with like Nightmare Before Christmas. I always consider Nightmare Before Christmas to be a Christmas movie as opposed to a Halloween movie, just because I think it kind of delves more into the Christmas aspects later in the movie. But yeah, to me, I'm just kind of all over the place when it comes to my holiday viewings.
Well, I think everybody has their own traditions, and that's kind of cool. Look, a lot of people like the old holiday classics. I'll go ahead and confess something now on this podcast that I've talked about online. I've never seen It's a Wonderful Life from start to finish. Like, I've seen bits and pieces of it. I feel like I know that movie because it's just so in pop culture, but I've never sat down and watched it. So I made myself a promise I was going to watch it this year in 2016. So going to sit down and actually get through it and watch it. And no, we're not reviewing it on the show, but I'll post something on Facebook about it so we can talk about it. But Nick, why don't we get into Krampus and as we've done before, you know, most people know, just to pull the curtain back here on the show, I write the plot summaries for 98% of the films we review. But every now and then we'll come across one where somebody gets really passionate about it. So like Ron's written a few, and you know, you did one for Terror Vision, which will go down in history as probably the only one ever written from the monster's point of view. And so I put it to you to write the plot summary for this because I could only imagine what you would come up with. Because I was going to go into it as cold as possible. I just watched it and took notes. So I'm going to give it to you now. Tell us what this movie's all about.
Okay. All right. Well, I put a little bit of effort into it, so you got to give me a little bit of credit. So, all right. 'Twas the night before Christmas, and all through the Ingalls house was a dysfunctional family filled with rednecks and even their spouse. As the kids sat together for a nice dinner meal, Max's cousins grabbed his letter to Santa and made him squeal. Max went upstairs because he was upset. He ripped up his letter and made a threat. Krampus heard Max's ordeal and decided that Max and his family would make a good meal. As Krampus's friends visited Max's brood, each one of them was picked off and eventually changed Max's mood. With all gone, Max went to face Krampus, but he would have none of it and tossed Max into a fiery mattress. Max suddenly awoke, alive in his robe, but little did he know he was inside of Krampus's new snow globe.
That was very good. I'm glad you called out the fiery mattress because I was having Hellraiser flashbacks there. So, and thankfully that's the only time I did because there wasn't any other Hellraiser moment. But
yeah, well, you know what? It's really hard to try and find something that rhymes with Krampus. So I'm like, well, mattress is close enough.
Yeah, no, like really, yeah, you got to slant the rhyme on that. I agree.
I was going back to like my later high school years, like listening to Eminem. It's like, how can I just try to make this rhyme?
Bravo on the attempt there, for real. But I have to ask a question before we get into this movie. Yep. This is based on something like folklore, right? What is Krampus?
Well, I never actually heard of Krampus before this. I was always a big guy into The Office, you know, the American version of The Office. And when I heard Krampus, I'm like, well, no, that's what Dwight went as 1 year, but he went as someone called Belschnickel. So I don't know if they have any relation in there, and maybe they do, maybe they don't. I mean, I think when you go over to like, you know, European folklore, I think, you know, there's always some type of version of St. Nicholas or Santa Claus. And then a lot of them, all of them, they always had like almost like the yin to that yang as far as like, well, there's the ultimate good one and then there's the bad one, which over here in America, we really don't have that. But looking it up, it looks like Krampus kind of was something that's like an old German tradition or something. And essentially what it sounds like it was something that was, like I said, kind of created as a counterpart to St. Nicholas. So as opposed to, you know, Santa Claus rewarding them, you know, the good kids with gifts, what Krampus would do is he would actually like swat the wicked children and then take them back to his lair. So,
wow.
So according to folklore, and I got this off the internet, Krampus purportedly shows up in towns the night before December 6th. He was known as Krampusnacht, or Krampusnacht, I don't know how to say it, or Krampus Night. And what happened was, during that time, that's kind of like, you know, when we celebrate Saint Nick, you know, it's kind of like the little mini Santa Claus gift that kids get on December 6th. Mm-hmm. And what the kids would do is, you know, they put their shoes outside, and if there was something like, you know, gifts out there, then they knew that they were being good. And for bad kids, they would put a rod. I don't know if a rod means something else, but I'm imagining it's probably something like coal or something like a cold gift or something.
I think the rod is probably the whipping rod, like the switch is what I'd call it, being in the South.
So Adrian Peterson's kids get that. So
yeah.
But yeah, so basically it's, like I said, he's the anti Santa Claus in a way. And it sounds like, he's not like necessarily like an evil being, but kind of just like one that's, works side by side with Santa Claus, and he's the one that visits the bad kids. I always kind of knew it as like, is that Black Tom? Was that the name of one?
I don't know. I don't know that, but you know what? This totally fits in with where we've been this year, because we talked about Stranger Things earlier this year and like Upside Down World, and we posited that, for every good thing there had to be the opposite reaction evil thing out there. So I'm totally getting what you're talking about. Like I'm picking up what you're putting down here. I'm following.
Yeah, I guess, it's, Jesus to the devil almost in a way where it's,
I guess, yeah.
One for the good and one for the bad. So
yeah, there's one for everybody. So it's,
yeah.
I like the idea though here, and just the basic setup of this is the story is pretty much, if you lose your Christmas spirit, then this bad thing can happen upon you. And I don't know, I like fairy tales and that type of thing where it's sort of told to you as a warning as much as anything, right? Like, and I'll tell you right now, the first thing I thought of as this movie started to unfold, and especially when we get the story of what Krampus is later on from the grandmother, I thought this is like that old crazy grandpa at the beginning of Silent Night, Deadly Night, that tells the kid like Santa Claus is coming to punish you and all this stuff, and it's like the most awful thing ever. But I get it. I'm like, man, maybe they just kind of took some of that from that folklore too. So I'm a big fan of that schlocky, series. And
I've never seen it, Jay, so I'll take your word on it.
Well, someday we'll correct that problem, but not this year, thank goodness. But no.
Yeah, okay, yeah. Here we are. We're not going to review something like it's a Wonderful Life or anything like that. But we'll get right into like Deadly Nights or Silent Night, Deadly Night.
Why do something everyone else already knows? So when have we ever done the thing everybody else likes?
I'll tell you this though, I've never seen It's a Wonderful Life. I've seen so many like plays on it, as far as like Simpsons episodes and South Park episodes, that I don't think I ever really need to see it. So.
Again, I think it's one of those things you probably know, even if you've never seen it. But I'll do the do. I'm still working on my 4 years ago now, it was New Year's resolution that I was going to read Moby Dick before I watched another Friday the 13th movie. I still hadn't made it through that one, but as the fans of our Shocktober series now know. But anyway,
you are Ishmael.
Yeah, pretty much. Well, let's get into this though a little bit, and I want to talk about. I guess the thing to do, I want to set up our families here, because really all this.
No, but we got to talk about the opening, and I really think that kind of like it kind of sets what I feel is the tone of this movie.
Okay.
And I don't know, have you ever been out Black Friday shopping? I guess that's the first thing we got to ask.
Oh, yes. And I have worked in retail during Black Friday shopping, and to a scene very similar to the mad rush that happens at the beginning of this movie.
I've been out Black Friday shopping once, and I was almost arrested.
I don't think it would fit you. I'm glad you refrain.
Yeah, but we bring that up because the opening of this movie is, of course, what I'm assuming is Black Friday, where they are showing all the stores and all the retails, and just how, we're supposed to be entering the time of togetherness and families coming together and friends and just, everybody, being good to each other. And it starts off, basically the Christmas season on like the most inhumane day of the year, and that would be Black Friday. And that's what they show in the beginning of this movie, is essentially the shops opening up, the malls opening up, and people just running through, and old men having heart attacks because the crowd pushing them around, and people ripping up toys and everything. And it kind of transitions then into a Christmas play, where then we do meet the family. And what happens then is, during that, we see that Max is actually getting into a fight with another kid and everything like that. And I think it kind of just shows like the type of, it's just kind of showing the character and everything of this, especially the family as well. So I guess with that, being said, we can get into this family and everybody who's a part of this. That
opening, though, you're right, is important because it sets the tone for this movie immediately, as this is going to be every bad thing that you can think of about the holiday, which is, people often think about, the shopping and all the insanity, but yet they still participate in it. Look, he is going to take a direct run at that like this and these attitudes and the way these people are. It's not that they all hate each other. It's that they don't know how to relate to each other anymore because the family is all about consumerism and work and all this other stuff. He's going right for the goat, our director is here, from the beginning, and I dug it. And I'll tell you the other thing, too, that really sold me on this. Kid actors in movies are always a crapshoot, and in horror movies in particular. And we talked about some of this stuff in other films where it just does not work. And a lot of it's because they have no way of understanding the world in a sensible way that makes their emotions make any sense, and they're usually being lied to about what they're in. But the kids in this movie, and I'm talking about all of them, but particularly the Ingalls here, I love Max and Beth. I think they are so true to form millennial teenagers, and the fact that they're close to one another. It used to be the rip in the movies was that the older sister hated the brother because he's a creep and she's just a girl and all this stuff. And nowadays, like, honestly, that's not how it is anymore. Siblings are way closer than they were like when I was growing up and stuff like that. Like, they really care about each other. She tries to keep him out of trouble. They have a good relationship going on. And the fact that he does stuff like he does at this Christmas play, and he doesn't really get in any trouble for it. Like, his parents are so like whatever, about all of it. I love that. I thought it was a great take on modern family dynamics. I mean, you tell me, you're the one with a kid. I mean, I don't know, but I just seen that. Yeah.
It is. I think it's almost like a weird inverse, I think, with the way like siblings are today, that I think because we're so like almost like unconnected from each other with all technology and stuff like that, that we're not necessarily in each other's space so much. Right. You know what I mean? If that makes sense.
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah, and I think by that way we're able to kind of become closer because we're not just like when we grew up or something with our siblings, how we shared bedrooms and, we were always, if you basically, you're playing with toys or trying to fight for the TV, where everybody today's kind of got their own stuff. But yet I think they're also, because of that, it gives them a little bit of space and they can actually come to appreciate each other. But I think that's kind of like, kind of showed in that relationship with Max and his sister. And also, I think just parenting today is a little bit different. Like, if I saw my kid get into a fight with another kid, you know what? I'm not going to sit there and be like the guy who's going to scold him. I'm going to find out what happened. If my kid was in the right, I'd be like, well, I hope you got a good shot on him or something. You know what I mean? It's kind of, if I was a kid and it was a fight, it'd be like, it doesn't matter if I was in the right. I'm in trouble. You know
exactly.
what I mean?
Yeah, that's how I grew up too. And that's the thing that I like about the family dynamic here, is because you've got a husband and wife, but you've also got his mother, who's elderly, but is, obviously she's not there visiting. She lives, call her Omi. They call her by her first name, which is very, modern and very, that's different. But their whole dynamic is very modern. And like, it's not like they don't like each other. They're just all like up in their own stuff. Like, he gets a phone call about work and Toni Collette's like, hey, I thought you said no work during the holidays. Well, I'm not working, but I got to take a few calls, and so he goes.
That's the whole thing with like those families. It reminds me a lot of my family, and especially like I'm talking like my nuclear family with my wife and my kid is like, especially, we're solid middle class people in America and stuff like that. And since my wife gets annoyed with me a lot because of my job, because it'll be the same thing. I mean, we'll be in vacation in Disney World and I'm taking work calls, and she said the same exact thing to me. She's like, I thought we were on vacation, and I'm like, well, I am, but I still got to take this. You know what I mean?
And that's happened to me too, even in what I do, working at colleges and stuff. I get calls during the holidays. I'm always having to do something. I mean, I may be off for like a good extended time during the holiday break, and it's one of the joys of what I do for a living. But I assure you, people, I do still work. I have to check in my email. I've got to, make sure things are running right in the system. But that's modern families, right? Like, that's the thing is like,
it is. It's always trying to explain to your spouse too that it's like, you got to understand, I got to keep my head above water, because if I don't necessarily have to do this, but when I get back to work, it's going to be 10 times worse if I don't just take this right now.
Exactly. And also, there's the whole thing of like, well, the reason we're able to do this is because I take these calls, so I've got to go do that now, and it's also the thing that flies in the face of the old world there, his mother, who really could be his grandmother, for goodness sakes, but his mom is there, is quite elderly, and you can tell like that just sort of brushes her, like she can't stand it, and I can totally understand that. Like, my grandmother, if my phone rings, when I had a work phone, when it rang at the holidays, she was like, what are you doing? And I was like, this is just what you have to do. And it is the way of the world. It's so different. And what's funny now is we've got a generation of people who are now middle-aged adults, which is what these people are supposed to be, and where we are, and now have teenage kids who are that in between being a kid and an adult, where now they've grown up in that world too. So you got really two generations of people that understand that's just how it is, and they don't know any different. Like, they wouldn't know what to do if you cut all that stuff off. And that's part of the fun of this movie, is the power gets turned off at some point, and they're all just kind of sitting around the fire looking at each other. They don't know what to do, and that's everybody's fear at the holidays, that I'm going to actually have to have a conversation with people I don't want to talk to. But I like our family dynamic of our Ingalls here. I really do dig them, and I give a lot of that to Adam Scott and Toni Collette. Toni Collette is a fantastic actress. Adam Scott is a funny guy who can just play the put-upon dad really well, I think. And the two kids here, I think they do a good job. I dig this family.
Yeah, Adam Scott, he kind of is almost like an offshoot of his character from Step Brothers.
Yeah, kind of is. Yeah,
successful business guy, but he's not an up in your face jerk in this one. He's
not Billy Zabka from the '80s. He's not that Cobra Kai hateful guy. Like, you actually kind of like this guy.
Yeah, he seems like he's a pretty good dad.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is like he tries to relate to his kids. He's trying to have a relationship with them, and they're not overbearing parents. The girl wants to go see her boyfriend, and the mom's like, okay, but come back in a couple hours. I mean, she's like, give her a hard time about it, and I'm like, well, that's exactly how my students talk to their parents. That's it. So I get it. I dug that, and I especially liked, immediately I could tell, like, the thing that epitomizes the old world versus the new world is, mom's in there cutting out gingerbread cookies by hand, doing it the old way, right? And Adam Scott comes up behind her, Tom, is like, I don't do too many of these. Sarah bought a bunch of them. And she's like, oh, I'm going to murder you. I'm like, at some point I thought, oh, she's going to become the evil thing. I thought she was Krampus for a minute, but that isn't how it turns out. We got to talk about, though, their family that comes to visit them, right? So this is Linda, who is, now let me get the relationship right. Linda is Tom's sister, is that right?
No, I took it as that was his wife's sister.
Okay, so this is his wife's sister. Okay, this makes more sense now. This is his wife's sister and her husband and their 4 children and their aunt. I guess her sister and Sarah's aunt that come to visit them. And
so it's they got this is almost like exactly like Christmas Vacation when you really think
really
about the family.
Yeah,
it is. I mean, you got your nuclear family right there, and then you got the less well-to-do family that's coming in, where the wife and then the wife of the other family are related, and then you got kind of the Uncle Eddie, who's played, of course, like I said, I brought up The Office. He played Todd Packer on The Office.
Yes. Oh, this guy David Koechner is amazing in this, because he can play, like you said, a cousin Eddie. He's sort of a modern day Randy Quaid, and he kind of plays that. He's got a little bit of redneck in him, and I didn't take him so much as not to be well to do. It's just that they were more rural, where this was definitely the city family. Like they wear camo and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, he's got a nice car. I mean, he's got a big ass Hummer, but I took it as they weren't as well to do because of Max's letter.
Right.
He was talking about them being a little bit on hard times, which today, I mean, you look at the Engel family. I mean, they're obviously upper mid class as far as how they live and stuff like that. So, they could just be lower mid class, and maybe that's just how they view them. But all in all, what you got to know about this family is they are more rural. I mean, they're more of like they're rednecks. I mean, that's just what it is.
Yeah.
And they have, 3 kids, 2 older daughters, and then a younger son. And the 2 older daughters are essentially, they're tomboys. I mean, they're dressed in camo and they're wrestling with each other, and they're kind of mean. I mean, they're mean girls, but not in the way like the mean girls are mean girls in that movie. They're just kind of like bully boys.
Yeah, I mean, like
ponytails.
I mean, I think, I forget if it's Max or if it's Beth that says it, that their father treats him like the sons he never had, and now he has a son, and we'll talk about Howie Jr. in a sec, but, like, he's not all there. Clearly, he's sort of like a lump of wood. And so they're tomboys. Like you said, they're tomboys, and they're girls. And I grew up around girls like this, who, if you did the 80s transformation with them, like you cleaned them up a little bit or whatever, they were gorgeous and nobody ever knew it. But mostly they just wore jeans and camo, and they cursed a lot and could drink beer better than the guys, and they could shoot better than the guys. They were better hunters, and they were tom girls. They were tomboys. And so I knew that. So I totally dug what it was. And you've got poor Max over there, who is like metrosexual in training, because that's who his dad is. And then you've got those girls that are like, what? And I got a kick out of their play off of one another.
Yeah, I mean, you got Max, he's obviously a sensitive kid. I mean, he kind of shows it that he wears his heart on his sleeve, and then you got these two girls, which are they were just one step away from having a thing of chew in their mouth.
I mean, yeah, really, I was surprised we didn't get that actually.
Yep, and then of course you got the younger brother there who, man, this kid reminded me, and it's going to come up again too as we get into the movie, the fat kid from Willy Wonka. That's what he reminded me of. It was like a cross between the fat kid from Willy Wonka and the fat kid from Bad Santa.
Well, I thought he was the fat kid from Goonies too. Like that, I was getting a little bit of chunk off of him. Because
except for he doesn't have the personality of Chunk. He all he wants to do is eat, and he doesn't. He's probably got to be on the spectrum somewhere.
I don't think he has a line in the film.
He may have a couple like mumbling lines as he's chewing food, but yeah, he seems like he's got some type of issue.
He gets taken by Krampus because they lower a gingerbread cookie with a hook on it down the chimney, and he bites it, and the gingerbread cookie kicks his ass. I mean, that's how he gets him. And I thought, well, that's perfect. That is exactly the fat trope. The fat kid gets taken out by the food, of course. So,
but then of course, what we had, and then there's another baby. There's a baby there who's just the baby to have a baby there, makes you kind of worry a little bit more about them because, of course, no one wants to see anything happen to a baby. And then, of course, you got Aunt Dorothy. Aunt Dorothy is awesome. I wish I had an aunt like Aunt Dorothy. She is like the foul mouth, like she's almost like, I don't know. It's just
I had to look.
It's almost like if you could like take like Whoopi Goldberg and make her like a fat white woman, where it's just she's pretty cool. Like you totally want her around Christmas because she's gonna get drunk, say something stupid, and then probably pee her pants throughout the night.
It's the part Melissa McCarthy is 20 years too young to play, but she will someday in her life.
Yep.
I'll tell you what she is. I had to look it up and make sure this wasn't Kathy Bates. Kathy Bates has started to play this role now in her later years, Academy Award winner Kathy Bates, and she does exactly the same. Like you said, you can tell like she's either divorced or widowed, and she doesn't give a damn what anybody thinks. She's going to say it and put it out there. And the funny thing for me is I actually have an Aunt Dorothy who is not this person at all. Let me just say that now. She's a very different personality, but it made me chuckle when they would say that because my Aunt Dorothy is one of those people that can get people to laugh too. And I just thought, oh, this would be hilarious if it was, my Aunt Dorothy. But yeah, I got a kick out of her. But I loved her too because again, she's the conscience of the audience and everybody else. She says the stuff nobody else is willing to say.
Yeah, she's a real fun character, and one like I didn't understand why she was there when I first started watching it, but when I was really glad she was throughout the movie because she's almost like exactly what you're saying. She's like what the audience wants to say a lot of times when there's a little bit of silence in the movie or just them talking. She just has no filter, and it's great.
No, it's really good. And we get them in the house. Like I say, it's all about, we have this Christmas dinner that is hell on earth, right? I mean, it's, I love the interplay between Howard and Tom, where Tom's like, this tastes really good. And Howard's like, mine's a little dry. And Tom's like, it's the same friggin' bird. It's like, well, do you want mine? And I love that they have that back and forth with each other, and the thing with the kids and all. But it does underneath all of this is good exposition happening between Omi, the grandmother, and Max, because she's on him about, have you written your Christmas letter, right? And he asks his dad, like, do you really believe in all this stuff? And that's really what's at heart here, right? Is that Max knows that Santa Claus is something for the smaller kids, right? And and there's this bully that's trying to tell them all that, and he stands up to the bully because he's like, I didn't want the smaller kids to have it told to them that way. You learn that on your own. You don't learn that because some jerk blows it for you in grade school, right? And I understood that. I kind of liked that about him, that he had a good heart. Like you said, you could tell he was a kid that wore his heart on his sleeves, and I think his grandmother knows that too. And so she's still trying to kind of keep that Christmas magic alive, because as we know, now she knows what the hell happens if you don't keep it, and clearly nobody else in the house has a chance.
Yeah, and I think that her whole thing too is trying to protect his innocence a little bit. She sees that he's, good of heart, and I think she's, trying to encourage him to keep on going and everything. But like at this Christmas table, what happens is that he did write a letter to Santa Claus, and of course the two tomboy cousins get a hold of the letter and then they read it out loud to everybody. And it's a pretty sweet letter, if it does have a little bit of condescending remarks about his family, but you really can't blame him for what the stuff that he says in there. I mean, essentially he brings up in the letter that, that his uncle wishes that the two girls were boys, but he hopes that, this is where I said, like they seem like they're kind of down on their luck, and he basically wishes that, Santa Claus can help him out a little bit and stuff this year. But of course the girls, are complete assholes to him, and he ends up taking the letter upstairs, and he basically turns it around where he just kind of says screw it, rips up the letter, and just kind of essentially throws his innocence out the window, because it's not, like it was just that was the last little bit for him to be broken, and it breaks him.
See, and I love this twist, this trope about be careful what you wish for. Like, I'm going way back now here to people that listen to the Artist Laying the Buffy show that Brian and I used to do. There's a great episode in season 3 where Cordelia, one of the characters, says, I wish Buffy had never come to Sunnydale, and she gets her wish, and of course it's hell on earth because the vampires have overrun the damn town, because Buffy's not there to kill them all, and she gets killed, and like everything goes bad. And I can think about, though, like when you're a kid, you will have those irrational thoughts, and even as an adult you can have these irrational thoughts, but as a kid in particular, you get that he's like, you know what, screw it, y'all aren't worth it anymore. He tried to be nice and they threw it back in his face, and so he's like, screw it, and he just sort of, like you say, his innocence breaks right there. The fact that there's consequences for that, though, that's the twist in this movie, because normally that would just be like he becomes this hardened, start smoking cigarettes and listening to rock and roll music. No, he's going to bring, complete and utter eternal doom upon his family because of this.
And I don't think it's necessarily because, he might have been I'm not going to say he was the cause of it. I think it was just the breaking point for finally, essentially this family, especially like the Rednecks family getting what they deserved as far as just being kind of nasty people. And, when you're, talking about Buffy, it goes back, it's a common trope that you see, like the whole, like, be careful what you wish for. I mean, it goes back to stories like, the monkey's paw, where it's like you wish for something, but it's going to be something completely, your wish is going to be fulfilled, but not in the way that you expected or wanted.
That's the thing. Like, there's a whole group of people that grew up thinking that your wish fulfillment was like Aladdin with Robin Williams. And if you go back and read those old stories and stuff, it was always, the genie was always screwing you over some way. Like, you wish you got it, but then, boy, you really regretted it later on, And again, it's nothing new, but to put that at Christmas and to have a little folklore tied into it, I thought it was cool, and it was smart, and it was fun. And that's what I was reacting to, was just how much more fun all of that plays off. And again, I'll put it to our actors here. They're doing a good job of selling me on all this too.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me, I don't know if you've ever seen either the 1967 movie or the remake in 2000, the movie called Bedazzled.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
The guy meeting the devil and stuff like that and wishing for stuff, and it always is like, it's going to be a complete twist on what you wish for.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's a cute movie too, especially the remake. I've never seen the one with Dudley Moore, but I know what it is. But the one with Brendan Fraser and what's her name?
Liz Hurley.
Yeah, Elizabeth Hurley. Yeah. Watching him, like, I want to be rich and powerful, so she makes him a Colombian drug lord. Well, you kind of got what you wanted, but it wasn't how you wanted it. And I love what he comes to understand is like, hey, I can't really wish somebody to be with me or whatever. I just, and so he does the selfless act, which gets him out of it. So I've now reviewed that movie. There you go, folks. But so we don't have to do the Bedazzled retrospective now, Nick. But the thing about this one, and this is the cool part of this, is there is no way out of it. Like, in the end, that's the cool part of this, is so many times the trope is, what can I do? What selfless thing can I do to, win myself back? What can I turn the tide on? And all it does is just makes Krampus laugh and throw him in the pit anyway. And so that's the ultimate cool about this, is once you've watched it and you know that, you can go back and rewatch this movie and go, none of it's going to make any difference. Like, no matter what they do, they are doomed from the time he tears that letter up and it summons this, being.
Mm-hmm. And what happens then, of course, when that happens is we get the DHL guy comes to the house, delivers a package.
Yeah.
And after that happens, all hell breaks loose. And essentially what happens is the power goes out. And there's no electricity, there's no nothing's working, and you get the daughter, and she's all worried about her boyfriend. She's either Skyping with him or texting him or Facebook messaging him or whatever, and she wants to go make sure he's all right, and just probably get away from the family too. I mean, be honest. I mean, they got to sit around here and be talking to each other, and she looks over, and of course she sees like the two female girls like wrestling, and she's like, I got to get out of here.
Yeah, I can't.
Even the mom's like, when you get back, I want you to have some girl time with them, and she's looking, and she's like, there's no girl time to be had with them. They're not girls.
Exactly.
So she goes over here, and I actually think this is like one of my favorite parts of the movie is she's walking down this snowy, dark road. She goes and she sees the DHL truck with the driver, and he's frozen solid inside the truck. Yeah. And it's like, what the heck is going on? And all of a sudden, we get to see Krampus for the first time. We get to see him. He's on top of the neighbors' roofs, and it's awesome. Just the sound of this movie when this is happening, and him running on the roofs, and the sounds that he's making, and her running away. And this is the part in the movie where like my son was on my arm as far as this was scaring him with Krampus. And of course she's got nowhere to hide, so she hides underneath a truck, and Krampus comes down, and you get to see, a little bit more of him, that he's got hoofs for, hind legs, and he's walking around, and then he leaves like a little Jack in the Box there for her. And then all suddenly it's kind of like boom, and that scene's done, and you don't know what happened to her, but you can pretty much put two and two together.
Oh, I love the fact that she is basically an off-screen kill. And I'm like, they killed the teenage daughter, like out of the gate. I thought it would, when watching this again, I knew nothing about how this was going to go. I'm like, this girl and his sister, who's already been set up to be close with, like they care about each other, right? So this is modern, millennial children here. They're going to have to band together to beat Krampus. And I'm like, well, no, she's dead underneath the friggin' truck. 30 minutes into this, I was like, holy cow, it totally got my attention. And then I was like, you know what? That's the purpose of this, though. It's supposed to get my attention. And now, again, having watched it, I realize there's an inevitability factor to all of this that is absolutely amazing. No matter what these people do, it is never going to work for them.
Yep.
And she disappears. Like, you don't see remnants. You don't know nothing. You just know what happened to her because you can hear the sound of the crunch underneath the car, and you never see her again until the end when they're in the snow globe hell or whatever it is. And I love that, though. I thought it was great because it also gives a good excuse for the two men to go leave the house again. You're in you have no power, but you know what? You got a fireplace, you got plenty of wood, you got food, you got what you need to sort of get by there. And they have to have an excuse to get out and to go get the teenage daughter. Yeah, that makes total sense. And so to get Tom and Howard out, I liked that as the inciting incident, if you will.
And the whole thing too is the first time you watch this, though, you don't know if she's dead. I mean, you kind of think about it, but like I said, I was going to this movie and I didn't know if this was going to be more comedy or more horror, if it's going to be like 50-50. So part of me is thinking like, okay, she's probably going to show up later, or she's going to be alive and Krampus hasn't, killed her. He's just holding him hostage or something. So that's what's going on in the back of my mind. But, as we get, further into the movie where, you got both of those people, the dad and the uncle, they're going out, looking for her and stuff. And of course, the uncle's got a gun in his car. I mean, typical redneck and stuff. He comes to a Christmas party loaded.
Oh, they're all loaded for bear. Like, he hands Tom a rifle, and he's like, "This is heavy." Yeah, it's Linda's, And I'm like, well, the whole family's into this. But I know families like this, really. And so I totally get it. I'm like, yeah, I get it. People walk around with weapons on them all the time. So, yeah.
But what I like, though, is like when they're out searching, they get over to, her boyfriend's house, and you see that it's just destroyed, and I think one of the coolest things is like the chimney is like completely like split open, and then they see like the hoof prints everywhere. So it's like, instead of them, I thought they were probably going to go like explore the house or something and but no, they end up just getting out of there and going back to the house.
Yes, they do the smart thing. They get the hell out of that house. I was watching this going like, how many stupid horror movies would they hang around that house too long? No. And it also told me something else. Krampus is like Will Money in Unforgiven. He'll kill you. He'll shoot your dog. He'll burn down your house. He'll kill your friggin' boyfriend. Like, he comes for you, and he takes out everybody near and dear to you. You know, like, I'm surprised there's not a scene of the bullies and the kids at the school all getting killed too that Max tried to protect, because, I mean, really, he goes to, why else would he go kill that boyfriend? She never got anywhere close to him. So, you know, he was bait essentially for Krampus. And I do like that, though. I like that they get out of there. And I got this whole, like, Candyman Goes Christmas vibe with the way that chimney was split and everything. I was like, oh, man, that looks like a Candyman rip. I really dug that. I thought it was cool.
Yeah, it was really cool. And then, of course, when they're coming back to the house, we get essentially they pull it from Tremors, where we get this thing. We don't ever really see it, and it's underneath the snow. And it's coming up to him, it's, you know, trying to essentially drag him underneath the snow and drag him away. But they end up getting, you know, they end up shooting at it and getting it away. But it kind of sets up why they can't leave the house now, is because there's something out there in the snow that's going to grab them. And the only safe place for them is in their house.
Exactly. And it's the best thing, again, it's a creature we don't see. We don't have to, because the effect works under the snow. As old as a trick as that is, right? It still works because, you know, we're afraid of that. Obviously it's not something they can just defeat on their own, so it worked. I thought that was a great invention too, because the reason they're in the house the whole time is because they're trying to keep this, you know, affordable as a film, so that it minimizes the set decoration and everything. You keep everything localized. It also makes the horror movie work better because people can't split up. Even in a big house, they're all around the fireplace, right? So it keeps everybody tucked in together, and now they're really afraid to walk out the door. So I dug it. I mean, I liked the Sarlacc monster or whatever the hell that was under the snow.
Yep. And so, but then again, they go again and they do something smart, is they start boarding up the house, because it's not like they're going to get back in and one of them's going to be like, oh, we saw this, and the other guy's going to be like, well, we don't know what we saw and all this stuff, and there's no like argument about it. It's just an understanding, like, something really effed up is going on right now, and we got to board this up, and we got to wait this out till morning. So they start, you know, boarding up the house and everything. And I think it's just showing, again, these characters are, you know, smart. And I like that is even as stupid as like the redneck family was coming off in the beginning, is that they still have some bit of common sense in them. And, you know, of course, you know, Beth, you know, she wants, not Beth, but Sarah, the wife, you know, she's basically on him, you know, like, we got to go find Beth. We got to go find Beth. And, you know, the husband, as much as it's like, you probably imagine he wants to go out there and search for his daughter, he knows that it's not going to accomplish anything at this point.
No.
And I think, and I think he kind of already probably can put two and two together. Probably doesn't want to believe it. He's not going to come back there and say that to his wife, but he knows right now the most important thing is protecting what he has left at this point.
Well, yeah, and I mean, let's just sum up what happens to them while they're outside. They make it to the DHL truck, too, and then Krampus attacks Howard and bites him on the leg, and Tom ends up shooting at him and, you know, scaring him away, basically. And I like the fact that Tom, the cityfied, you know, doesn't know what he's doing guy, actually becomes a little macho and a hero, and Howard kind of becomes a little crying bitch there. He gets hurt and he's like, you know, and I mean, but I love the fact too that there's no argument about what happened. He's like, no, it was a snake. He's like, no, I don't know what the hell that was, but we ain't going back out there, you know. And I love that there's no argument about that from then on, and it actually like bonds them. Like, because I think Howard has a line. He's like, "Look, I'm starting to like you because you saved my life, and you're not the big pansy I thought you were. So don't be pushing it, you know." And so I dug that. As you know, I have brothers-in-law who are like, they're both like, I admire the heck out of them because they're rough and tumble military, you know, gung ho G.I. Joe kind of dudes. I could never do any of that kind of crap, you know. So I get the relationship there a little bit, and it's funny to me to see. But the next attacks, though, are what's great, man, because you realize how screwed they are, because they go up in the attic and there's presents there, and I'm already having, like, Sinister flashbacks. I'm like, oh, this is not good. Don't touch these things.
When they get back to the house, I think it's funny because it's not funny, but you could tell the grandma, she knows something, and she's not saying it, and she's got that look in her eyes, and, you know, it's getting late at night, and there's a big concentrated effort on, we got to keep that fire going. We got to keep it up. And of course, you know, the uncle, he says, you know, I'll take first watch. I'll stay awake. And of course he falls asleep, and then the fire goes out. And then what happens is we get the little fishing line down there with a little gingerbread guy on it who happens to wake up the fat kid.
Of course.
And Yep. So then the fat kid goes over there and he wants to eat the gingerbread man, and he ends up getting pulled up through the chimney. Of course, it wakes everybody up. They grab him, trying to hold him down, but he ends up getting slid up through the chimney. Very much like Willy Wonka, where the fat German kid got sucked up the chocolate chute, and it was just very, very familiar of that. But it just, again, it's funny in a way because like. You got the little gingerbread guy down there and he's making all these little funny, like almost like minion noises to be able to get the kid over there. And again, it's terrifying yet hilarious at the same time.
Well, it plays off of something you understand. It's that this is how you would tempt that kind of person. And so it totally works in that regard, And again, and I'll say one thing too, like in the hands of another director, like the gore factor would be over the top and that would unsettle us. Like if the little kid gets pulled up the chimney and gets killed, I can live with that in this kind of movie because I'm not seeing his arms fall around. And I'm not getting the Rob Zombie effect. You know what I mean? Like he's not doing that kind of stuff. So he knows how to make it horrific without making it overly bloody. Also having to think
there's no blood or gore. And also, I mean, again, I'm just going to bring up the fact is we don't know if they're being killed or not. You know what I mean?
Right.
Again, without having any blood or gore, it's kind of just in a way relieving the audience in a way that you're seeing like all this horrific thing, like especially happen to kids now, 2 kids in a row, but it's not done in a horrific way. And it also still leaves you wondering if they're still alive or if they are killed.
Well, but it is the horror movie pickoff. Like we're starting to take out the people, and we do get like I love how this is all Grandma's fault, sort of. Basically, we get a reveal here. Before we get to the attic, she tells everybody, "I was the last person." And I love that the flashback is like animated. It's like the old animated Gumby.
Yeah, it's like it's almost like it's claymation. It's going back. It's a pull on the old classic Christmas movies that we watch as kids. I mean, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, the Santa Claus movie, Frosty the Snowman, where it's all done in the stop motion claymation.
Exactly.
I mean, it's the same look. And what it is Omi reveals, her as a child, and she did the same thing as Max, where she wished this happened, and all of a sudden Krampus came and took her entire family away. And it all happens while she's in bed. And of course, she's peeking over the sheet, and then she sees the silhouette of Krampus in the background, and he kind of gives her a wink. And then the big thing is that he leaves her an ornament. It's like one of those bell ornaments that says Krampus on it, kind of as a way to like, don't ever forget.
Exactly. And she's carried that for all this time. And what's funny is she's like been speaking, I don't know, German, Austrian, something the whole time, and everybody's just talking to her back in English, but they understand what she says. And we don't get any subtitles or anything. And then she starts speaking in English, and Aunt Dorothy's like, friggin' English, told you. And I was like, apparently there'd been an argument in the car ride up about that. So, but it's another layer of the Dorothy. But I like how this is pretty much all her fault. And this is what I thought was going to happen just from the outset of this thing. I was like, she's going to be involved in this somehow. And the fact that they choose to reveal it like this is a great choice. I mean, director's choice here, brilliant idea, because we've seen a billion flashbacks with actors. Why not give us something we haven't seen? And like you said, play on that thing that we all know. We're all familiar with Frosty and Rudolph and those stories. And just, turn it into this horrific story is just great. And I really dug the story here. Because now, I mean, the secret's out of the bag. We know what's happening. And so what can we do about it?
Well, it kind of reminded me of Harry Potter, one of the last ones when they're doing the Deathly Hallows flashback.
Yeah,
where you kind of get like the animated thing. But I think what it does is it also gives her, it kind of opens up a little bit of her motivation in the earlier the movie where, she's trying to have her youngest grandson not lose his Christmas faith because that's what she did and that's what brought that upon her family. So in a way, she was always trying to protect him and protect the family, saying, don't lose it. You know what I mean? You got to keep this with you. It's not only good, but it's going to, it keeps us safe.
Exactly. And literally it keeps them safe. Of course, now they can't do it. So we get to the attic, and I love how Krampus has laid out all these like presents that are essentially like his minions to do his will up there. And I told you I had Sinister flashbacks and I had Time Bandits flashbacks. I was like, oh, that's a piece of evil. Don't touch that. And sure enough, it all hell breaks loose when they touch the things. The evil gingerbreads come out and start wreaking havoc on that family. They kill the 2 daughters. And
what it was, if we go back to, we're talking about the DHL guy and his delivery package, that's what he delivered. It was Krampus delivering the presents, and within those presents was basically, just a bunch of these like weird creature monsters.
Well, it was a ticking time bomb just waiting to go off,
Yep. So, and then, so the two, redneck girls are, taken by him, and oh man, the one scene with like the Jack in the Box guy when he's eating the daughter.
Oh, that is messed up. The face that opens up, that predator looking face, that was amazing looking. I was like, wow, that was a nice effect. Like, again, we talked about there's not a ton of gore in this movie, but there's some good monster stuff, and I was like, that's a good looking practical effect. And I want to emphasize that is a practical piece of rubber and makeup that they made that work, and it looks awesome.
It looks better than anything they could do with computer effects. I mean, it's
completely
great. And then also, there's, up there, you got the Jack in the Box guy, you got the teddy bear who's got, the nasty teeth, you got the you got the angel that's supposed to go on top of the Christmas tree that comes alive with
evil,
the wings, a little demon thing. And also, why this is happening downstairs is the uncle, he's fighting off the 3 evil gingerbread men. I guess they were named Lumpy, Dumpy, and Clumpy. Yeah, it was great. I loved that scene with them. I mean, it's the only like real obvious CGI scene in here is when he's fighting them in the kitchen, and they're attacking him. I love the sounds that they're making, and then they have candy canes, the sharpened candy canes trying to attack him. Of course, he blows them apart with the shotgun. And all I'm thinking too is, I'm like, man, if that was my house, I'd be kind of mad that there's going to be shotgun holes all in the hardwood floor, man. That's going to cost a fortune to have to replace that.
Hey, that ain't his house. He don't care. So
that's true.
Howard's got that Hummer. He don't care. So no, but really, I mean, you're right. We get like it's like watching the Shrek gingerbread man fight, but better. It's the same thing as if they're evil. And this felt like this is the thing that felt most like Trick or Treat to me. I was like, this is we're just playing in a sandbox we know at this point. And I loved that though. I mean, I was down for that, and the fact that it just keeps going and going. And what we ultimately learn is, you said it in the plot summary, Krampus is essentially like devouring these people by throwing them in his sarlacc pit that he can like carry around with him.
Yep, he is. Yeah. And well, what happens though is like, the 2 girls are taken, and I think this is like, it's a funny scene because like the Jack in the Box guy, like he's using like the cold air, air returns to crawl around in, and he ends up breaking through the ceiling, and they're about to off him. And also he does like this little like clapping motion. And all of a sudden like Krampus's elves all come through the door, and they end up taking, Howard the uncle, they end up taking Aunt Dorothy, and then they grab the baby, and then they leave. So it's, they eliminated quite a few people in this big attack. And all that's left now is Max, his dad, his mom, and the aunt at this point.
Right, yeah, so we've really whittled the cast down at this point. And they're going to go about dispatching with each of them in a pretty quick fashion. Like, the thing about this movie is that it's 98 minutes long, and I mean, it moves at a quick pace. I mean, it's really kind of, I don't know, it's amazing how fast it goes. And I love how the family decides to make a run for it. And Omi says, I'm going to stay back and confront Krampus, which is, of course, always, right? Like, that's what's going to happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she wants to, confront them and, finally face her fears. And he comes down the chimney, and this is when we actually get his, his full reveal. And, he's this big hulking monster with, the hoof legs, and he's got this like serpent-like tongue that comes out behind, like, you never really see his face. You see that it's a mask of Santa Claus over his face, and then he's got this tongue that comes through the mouth opening, and he ends up opening up this bag of gifts, and they come out, they attack Omi, and basically just, cuts back to the family. So that, she ended up getting it as well.
Exactly, like the bag of toys gets her, right? And then you see Tom, Sarah, and Linda get eaten by a snow creature, and the elves take away the other daughter that was left, right? So Max is the only one left at this point. And I love how Krampus gives him his little bauble thing, with his name wrapped on it. It was in a piece of that shredded Santa letter. And I was like, oh man, what a terrible reveal, right? So, but this is where the movie usually would end, right? But
well, it could
yeah.
end, yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe he ends up falling asleep or gets freaked out and he wakes up in the morning and he's alone or something like that. But what happens, and again, it just shows you that, the character Max is that he realizes that he was the cause of this, especially when he got that, when he gets the bauble and he sees that it's, with his letter. And he decides that, he's going to go face Krampus and essentially try to bargain with him. He finds him, he's on top of this hill with this big, crater opened up with, the fires of hell below it. And he goes up to Krampus and, basically stands him down man to man. And he says, this is my fault. They didn't deserve this. Take me, bring them back, just end this. And
yeah, he says, I'm sorry, and all this stuff. He does everything you're supposed to do to get out of it.
Yeah, and I'm thinking, okay, well, this is going to be like, we brought the movie Bedazzled, where it's like, oh, he's going to do the selfless act, and all suddenly, Krampus is going to disappear, and everybody's going to be fine, and that, that's going to be the end of the movie, and it's like, he learned his lesson, but no, Krampus grabs him and then throws him down into the fiery pit as well, and then it cuts to black, and I honestly thought that's where the movie was going to end.
Yeah.
But it doesn't, and all suddenly it restarts up.
Well, can I talk about one thing, though? He says something, though, that I caught the first time I watched this. I watched this twice for this review, and the second time it just hit me more like a brick. He says, I want Christmas to be like it used to be. And so Krampus essentially says, okay, then, it'll be like it used to be forever. And that's what he gets. I mean, he throws Max into this pit. Max wakes up. Everybody's there. His sister's there. And she's like, where have you been? We've been waiting on you forever. There's only so many times I can sing Joy to the World or whatever. And he's like, oh, everything's great. And then he opens up that little bauble and everybody remembers all of a sudden what happened to him.
Yeah,
where they are.
And it wasn't a bad dream. They're probably all sitting there thinking, they all probably woke up like man,
woo.
that was a really screwed up dream and stuff. But I guess, there's discussions on what the end of this movie means, because it's not really clearly defined on what happened. Part of what I, when I was talking with my mom, I was like, oh, did you like that movie and stuff like that? And she's like, yeah, and we're talking about the ending. And she, my mom totally got a different thing. She thought it would just all went back to normal and the family learned a lesson, and that snow globe was just Krampus watching them, making sure that everything stayed normal, where I'm like, no, that's not what I got from it. I'm like, when you watch it, you'll notice that the film changes. It has a more warm hue to it, almost like it's like a old time movie or something like that.
Yeah.
And I said, I took it that Krampus eventually has them in a time warp where they're going to have Christmas every day for for all eternity. They're careful what you wish for. You want a Christmas to be like what it was. Well, it is going to be like it was for all time.
That's what I'm saying. Is like, you realize his wish and how damning it is that you're going to be in Groundhog Day and it's going to be Christmas the way you wanted it forever. And that's what they have to live with. And I was like, man, that's a mind screw. And the thing I loved about it is you pull back from those snow globes and that, wretched looking dungeon he's got them all in, and you see all the other ones and you're like, this is what Krampus does to the families he takes. Essentially, is he puts them in these perpetual time warps to relive this nightmare over and over again. And my thought was well, does it stay like Happy Christmas Day and then they all just realize they have to wake up and do it again forever, or do they get attacked by Krampus every Christmas and all have to die and then wake up the next day and relive that all the time?
I take it that they're going to be almost like Beetlejuice, where they're going to be trapped in that house, and essentially they're just going to keep on waking up every day, and it's going to be Christmas. The presents that they got, they're going to open up the same presents, they're going to eat the same food, they're going to have to deal with the same weather, the same things on TV, and have to deal with the same people for all eternity. And that last part is the scariest part.
Yeah, I mean, really, that's the thing. I think the dad has a line early in the they're only here for a couple of days, or something like that. And they're there for eternity. So
Yep. That's exactly how I took it. And it's like, again, it just goes back to, the whole thing with Krampus is careful what you for.
Well, Nick, I think we're at the part of the podcast where it's time to give final thoughts, recommendations, and popcorn ratings. So what are yours for Krampus?
Well, I think it's pretty obvious. I mean, even in the beginning of this review, I was kind of, wearing my heart on my sleeve for this movie, even though I was trying to be coy with it. But I really love this movie. I mean, this is just so up my alley. I mean, if you listen to our reviews of movies like Tremors, I'm a fan, just a passionate fan of 80s, late 80s, like horror movies where they're, got comedy in them, don't take themselves seriously, but are just fun monster flicks like The Blob. I don't know if you ever seen that movie, the remake of that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I love movies like that. And this was such a callback to that. I mean, just like Trick or Treat was, as far as a callback to the Creep Show era, this was very much like a callback to like The Blob and Tremors, and it was just and like a healthy mix of like Christmas Vacation and a little bit of Gremlins, and again, those are just all movies that I love with a passion, and for me, this is a large popcorn. I can't give an extra large popcorn because I can't give movies like this, like something like Goodfellas or Godfather Part 2, but it is such a solid large popcorn. It's part of my Christmas rotation. It's gonna be a movie where I only watch around the Christmas time just because it gives me that Christmas feeling, and. It is. I couldn't. It's just like Christmas Vacation, where I really like that movie, but I can't watch it any other time of the year because I'm going to wish Christmas was here.
Right.
And as dark as that sounds, like, man, you must like really wish bad things would happen to some of your extended family, and that is true. That is true. There is some of my extended family I would like to see be taken by Krampus, but we won't get into that. But just to show you, I'm actually, after this review, I am going to go put this on. Just talking about this has just got me in the mood to rewatch this. So very, very strong, large popcorn.
I'm going to join you in that large popcorn as a newbie on this, and being glad that it's been introduced to me. This is one I want to show, my family and stuff like that, because there are certain members of my family that I know will totally dig this and get it. And I'm with you. This is just so much fun. And I lay a lot of it on the director and the actors and the good script. I mean, it's a good story and it's fun. And I'm really curious to see if they can do anything else with these. There's other Krampus movies out there. I can't find anything to see if they're connected to this one. Something tells me that they're not. But if they ever come back to this again, I think there's plenty of fertile ground to take. But even if it just exists in only this one form, I think it's fantastic, and I really enjoyed it. I'm going to give it a large popcorn as well, and I'm glad I got to see it, and glad we got to talk about it here as we end up 2016. Nick, it's been a busy year for us on Film Strip, man. We have reviewed a lot of stuff this year. You've been in on a good bit of it. Ron and Brian have been in on a lot of it. We did 2 big horror series, but we got to talk a little bit about 2017 because it's right around the corner. I mean, we still got Star Wars coming up at the end of this year. That'll be kind of our year-ender with Rogue One. But we got some cool stuff coming right in January, too. You and I are going to take a dip in the old water. We're going to talk about the 4 Jaws films right out of the gate.
Yeah. It's going to be fun talking about those movies. I watched Jaws, the original, many, many times, but it's been years since I've revisited the sequels, so it's going to be very interesting to talk about that. I don't know if I'm excited or nervous or maybe a little bit of both about revisiting some of those.
You really can be. I mean, either one with those sequels. But I'll say now, those sequels are an interesting study in different film types. I think each one of them is a different genre. We'll talk about that, but we've got that coming up. Of course, Kurt and I are going to be doing kind of a year-long exploration of 10 Stanley Kubrick films, sort of his 10 feature-length films, starting with The Killing and then going into Paths of Glory and all the other ones, Spartacus, you name it, Clockwork Orange. And it's going to be a weird time for me because you and I already reviewed The Shining as part of our Selected Works of Stephen King retrospective a few years ago. I'm going to re-review it this time with Kurt, and I'm really just going to kind of be looking at the director flourishes. I'm going to try to look at it from that point of view, but that'll be a different way of doing things. We've never gone back and done another film again, but I felt like it being a part of a different retrospective, different tone, we would do that this time. So we got that coming up, but those are going to be scattered throughout the year. There's a couple of, we're really going to hit 3 big horror series that are out there throughout the year. Brian and I are going to do the 4 Scream films probably sometime in the spring. But there are 2 big franchises you and I are going to tackle throughout the year. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre and the Saw movies, because in 2017, there are new additions or new entries in both of those series coming out.
Yeah, I'm going to be excited. For Texas Chainsaw, I'll kind of blow my load right here with that. But I've seen the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and I've seen the remake. I have not seen anything else of that series either. So I'm a Texas Chainsaw virgin, so to speak, when it comes to watching that. So it will be interesting. I've heard many things about those, and the twists and turns. I'm looking most forward to actually watching Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, the second one done by Tobe Hooper, because I've heard some crazy bad things and some crazy good things on it. So it might be right on my alley.
It is definitely crazy. That is for sure. That is a series that is going to be interesting. It's been a while since I've revisited them, but I have seen them all, and so it'll be neat to go back to them. All but the new one called Leatherface, which we're not sure when that's releasing yet. They haven't put a date on it, so if they ever will, we'll know when we're going to time that retrospective. But depending on when that happens, we may end up pushing it around a little bit and just doing it after it hits video. But we're going to do the new Saw. There's a new Saw coming out in October. That's really going to be our Shocktober series. We'll start that back in September, and we'll do all of those. But we're also going to pick up on some other series that we've done, and it's time to just pick up on things that are happening. I mean, we're going to finally finish Paranormal Activity. We're going to get Ghost Dimension in there and put that out. And there's a new Blade Runner coming out. There's a new Alien movie. You're going to be on both of those with me.
Yeah, it should be fun.
And, we put a couple of polls up on the Fabish Factor Film podcast Facebook page, and we're going to be going back. Some of the crew and I are going to go back, and we're going to do a couple of John Hughes films. We're going to do The Breakfast Club, which is, a lot of people consider to be a classic, of course, and one of his best. And we're going to do Planes, Trains, and Automobiles for next Thanksgiving time. That's a big one for you, I know, and I know Brian's a fan of that film, so we'll get different conglomerations of us to do those two. Ron and I are going to go dip our feet back into the Golden Globus Canon Films pool. We did another poll, and the people have spoken, and they demand that Naked Space Vampires and Jean-Claude Van Damme be a part of our 2017. So we're going to be talking about Life Force. It's another Tobe Hooper film, and Bloodsport. Now, I've never seen Life Force, but I have seen Bloodsport. So I haven't seen it in a long time, though. So looking forward.
I've seen images from Life Force. So
I think every guy on the internet has seen images from Life Force, but we're going to be doing those throughout the year. And then we're going to sprinkle in a few other things here and there as they come upon us. I mean, there's all kinds of room for different stuff as we start looking at what's coming up in the next year. But those are going to be our big series.
Don't forget about Star Wars.
Well, yeah, there's a new Star Wars at the end of the year. We'll definitely get back to that one, and so that's going to be a December release again. They keep putting those things in December, man. It's like killing me. But we'll do some more of that, and there's plenty of stuff to come on Filmstrip in the next year. I mean, that's just a smidge of what else is out there. We're really excited about all of these. And of course, from time to time, we are known to just throw things out there and let you have an opinion. And the only way you can do that is if you keep up with us on social media. Follow us on Facebook and, join in on the Fabish Factor page. That's the one where we post all the polls, because that's where we do a lot of episode discussion, and we argue about a lot of other things like, Batman Returns and Christmas trees and Stephen Avery's guilt or innocence and all kinds of other stuff. So we get into all of that there. And of course, folks, all of our episodes, our entire catalog, we're way past 200 episodes now on iTunes, available for you for free. As always, you can enjoy it. You can go all the way back to the beginning of this podcast 6 years ago if you want to. Though I'll tell you, our last 4 have been way better. So we finally figured out what we were doing, sort of. But lots of stuff going on. And dare I forget, the thing that brought Nick onto the show, the Blair Witch Project. There was a new Blair Witch movie in 2016 we didn't get to, man. So we'll have to do that one early on in 2017 as well, because I've heard a lot of things about it. I haven't seen it, but I've heard a lot
of things too, and that it's kind of fitting that might have been my start of reviewing movies, and it also might be the end of me reviewing movies from what I heard. So
I don't think it will be, based on some of the other stuff that you're already signed up to review. So
it's no Anaconda from what I hear.
It's no, well, and you never know, folks. Anaconda 2, The Hunt for the Blood Orchid. We may eventually wrangle Curtin to do that. You never know. So just hang around, keep up with us, subscribe on iTunes. Again, if you like the show, leave us a review. It helps other people find the show. Hook up with us on social media. And you don't have to agree with us either. I mean, if you think we're totally off base and wrong about something or whatever, say it. That's fine. You're welcome to your opinion too. We're always good to interact.
I listen to these shows with me on it, and every time I'm on here, I completely disagree with myself. So it won't be any different.
Well, do check us out, though, folks. And, of course, if you subscribe on iTunes, you'll get the feed all automatically updating. But we'll let you know if anything else is going to change. Again, we threw out that whole catalog of stuff. It's always subject to change. Things could happen. But that's our plans for 2017. So one more episode left in 2016 here. That'll be Rogue One. We'll try to get that one out not long after it releases. But until then, for Nick, I'm Jay. Thanks for listening to Filmstrip.
Thank you for listening to Filmstrip. You can find more episodes on our website, continuousplaypodcast.com/movies. Please leave us a positive review on iTunes and link up with us on Facebook. The Filmstrip theme music is produced and performed by Frozen Lake 121.